Hello and welcome back. This is ProTaleDev back with another Game Jam video, and what we're going to be looking at is the Yogscast Game Jam 2021. So that recently finished. It was completed, and I took part in it. And I mentioned this already in a previous video. You may have seen the gameplay video that got put on the channel. That is just confirmation that I did take part in the Game Jam, and it's up there ready to be played. You can play it for yourself. There'll be a link in the description. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the Game Jam as a whole, kind of what I did for it, where some of the ideas came from, and then, looking back on the feedback that I got to kind of finish it off. Instead of previous Game Jams where I've done the day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, I'm not going to do that because this was a week of the Game Jam. I don't have time to edit that much footage, and I couldn't really talk about it like I did with Passing Room and previous Game Jams, because I kind of wanted this to be a less pressure, kind of more chilled out Game Jam, something I can just chill out and do, and just jump on. And when I'm recording, it doesn't really become like that. When I have to try and put up a video for it or clear the first, second day, I can't really do that. It adds a little bit more pressure that I didn't really feel like doing. After this Game Jam, I'm a little bit burned out, but hopefully I'm still working on the Tycoon game. It's really close to being finished. I'm still fine-tuning it and fixing bugs and things, but for the most part it is done. It's just I'm working out some kinks. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show is the main menu, and that we'll get it out the way. So a lot of the assets in the game have been brought back over, re-imported into this project. So all of the Christmas assets are used for the hide and seek game that I made last year for the Jingle Jam 2020. I've basically made this version of the game using those assets. Essentially what it is that it's going to be, in terms of visuals, it's going to be very similar because of that. First of all, the main menu is also very similar. We've got instructions here on how to play. So essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing as Santa Claus. The Game Jam's theme was opposites. So I went with reverse Christmas, so the opposite of Christmas, where Santa would be delivering presents. In this game, you're going to be stealing the presents away from the children. The evil-looking children is one down here. So with that in the mind, what you do is you steal the presents, you take them to a sled, and then you can put them into your factory, where you can completely compress, burn them, turn them into charcoal, and then essentially that's kind of the point of the game to score. So first of all, we're inside the game now, and what we can do is we can see some of the children over there. You can hear them. Hopefully there is game sound. And you can see them just wandering around. What they'll do is they'll patrol different areas. They'll wander around and try and find you. When they do find you, they will chase you and come after you. What you can do though is you can hide. So you can see someone coming over here right now. What we can do is we can hide by pressing left, right click on the mouse, and you can see the bar at the bottom left. When that's over, and then we'll come out. So there you go. The icon on the left also appears when you're near a present, so you can hide. So we can hide again, and the child won't see us. You can see that we also have a health bar, so we can take damage. But what you want to do is you want to pick this up by pressing E, grabbing it, and then taking it to a sled to deliver to our factory later. Now, this is a brand new mechanic I've not done in any other Game Jams or any game that I've worked on, which is a virtual a pickup system. So you can pick up things, and it's in range. You can see that there's like a little marker, a little cursor, which is the ball, and essentially that just has a collision, and it detects when it's colliding with a present. When it does, we can determine a bunch of other things, such as deactivating collision and also making it a parent and child of that ball so that it can be carried around. But yeah, we can hide whenever we need to. Different presents have different scores, so there's small presents, medium presents, and large presents, all with their own amount of score that they can give. So at the moment we're just delivering what we can, and just trying to stay away from the children. We can jump around, we can hide. Let's just hide here. We can also, this was something that I wasn't too sure if I was going to keep, but I ended up doing it, which is to be able to pick the present up and get ready to run with it. which I kind of like. Essentially what you're doing is the Santa Claus is shrinking himself, hiding inside the present, and then running towards the sled to deliver it. Very simple mechanics, very basic. So we have an hour to get as much score as we can. These guys can be outrun, but you can get stuck in corners and things. It's not too hard of gameplay. The difficulty actually comes with finding presents that are further and further away. Which a lot of the so there are 3 children that will end up hunting you in this, and the closer you are to this center over here, the more they'll be, because they collect in this area. So this will be always where they meet up. And so a lot of the presents over here will get harder and harder to get, because there's a fixed amount of presents that you can have. The larger presents are also more commonly at the center of the village, which is where they are. So the more presents you get near this sled, the less there'll be, and so you're going to have to go further and further out to get more and more, and that has more and more risk. So we have taken a little bit of damage, as you can see. They do quite a lot of damage. Okay, so we've gained quite a lot more presents. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to the North Pole, we're going to fly off, and we're going to get those presents and turn them into coal. So this was a part of the game that people didn't expect, because I didn't release any screenshots when I had this game jam up. When I had this submitted for the game jam, I didn't have any screenshots, and the video people hadn't really watched it. I did release that gameplay video for the submission. And so let's go into the North Pole, to the factory section. And as I was just saying there, people didn't know that there was actually a factory section. That was a big surprise for some people, and so it was a positive surprise as well. So when you get your presents, when you come to the North Pole, they'll all spawn in here, and that'll set the other area to 0 in terms of presents. They'll all spawn here, and we can now deliver them. So what you want to do is you want to grab your presents, and you want to go and take them all the way up here. So drop presents here. This will put them on the conveyor belt, ready to be sent into the factory. It'll get sorted over there, and then it'll go through the factory, and you'll get the appropriate score. There is a bug where the presents will float up in the air occasionally, and that's usually when there's a collision with another present. Luckily, I did try and fix it before the game jam ended, so for the most part it is fixed. It will deactivate and fall to the ground, maybe just a little bit of a distance away from you, but for the most part I did fix it, but it does happen occasionally. Essentially I've lowered the amount of chances that it can have where it's a really... There you go, so as you can see that present has a weird collision, but it did fall and come back to me. So yep, pushing these onto the conveyor, they'll go all the way through, and they'll go onto these conveyor belts. So they'll get started by these 3 cubes, essentially, these sections right here, these floors. Depending on what present it is, it'll hit a specific one, and if it's a large one, it'll go all the way to the bottom. If it's a small one, it'll get to the top. Middle is the medium-sized presents. And as we send these across, what will happen is that there are some issues with the pickup. It isn't great, but it was my first time doing that pickup system, so expect some bugs and issues. So let's quickly, before we move some more of these presents, let's quickly go and have a look what's happening with these. So you can see a present right here, and what's going to happen is it's going to slide down and go into one of these elevators, which gets sent all the way up here to another section of conveyor belts, and then goes into these incinerators right behind here. These incinerators turn them to dust, and what happens is it gets pushed down over here. You can see some dust right here. The dust gets pushed down, it gets compressed, turning it into coal. So you'll see that in a second. And there we go, we got some coal. Now we can do 2 things with these coal. Of course, coal is score, so you want to get as much score as you can before the timer runs out. You can end the level early if you want to, and it'll just tell you the score and what you have at the very end. Or you can just, obviously, you die, it'll tell you the score then as well if you were killed by any of the children. But what we can do is we can spend that score. so we can upgrade our factory and ourselves. So you can make the conveyors faster, you can have double present collection, you can have a conveyor appear at the holding area, so essentially that goes up there, so you don't have to keep lifting it onto the conveyor. You can just put it on a nearby conveyor and it'll make it a lot easier. We also have a conveyor factory borders to stop presents from coming off the conveyor belts. What you can also do is you can also have double present ash, which is basically this compressed dust, so it'll get double amount of score from that as well. And then we've also got the player movement, increasing the player movement in general. So that's the first thing you can do with your score. The next thing is we can actually take some of this coal, and as you can see at the bottom left, we've actually got a little bit of health that's been lost. We can take some of our coal. I'm having that collision issue that I mentioned before. And what we can do is we can go and grab this. Oops. This coal, and we can go and convert it into health. So if you come up to the top section, what we can do is we can drop this into our coal furnace, and when we place this in here, we will actually get some health back. There we go. So that's how you get health back. Ultimately, that is the basis of the game. So getting presents, get score, you can upgrade, get more presents, and then when the timer runs out, whatever score you have, you've essentially got, and you can try and beat it in the next game that you try. Essentially, that is the basis of the game. Now overall I spent a week on this, but again the assets were all brought in. There was a lot of stuff that I tried that was new, like the pickup system just mentioned, also the conveyors, doing the conveyors and factories and upgrades, kind of new, done a little bit of that in the past, but ultimately it was something that I really wanted to bring into this game, to add a little bit of a spin on that aspect, kind of a little bit extra to just the collecting the gameplay. So initially the idea was to do a hide and seek with the children again, but it was too similar to the previous game I did last year. So I added that first section was essentially expanded on. And this whole section, this whole factory idea, came in after. So after I did that, I felt like that part of the gameplay, let's just go into our scene. Let's just go into the level right here. So after I built this whole section right here, and then did the children and the AI, and these are all these mechanics, and it was pretty much as good as I wanted it for the base, I realized that it was kind of just a little bit too short and boring. I kind of wanted added a little bit more, and so I decided the factory section would really add on to that experience of being able to customize and be able to build onto what you're doing over there. It would also bring a little bit more strategy, because then you would have to decide how much time you're spending in this area. You know, do you come here first, or do you try and get enough for the factory? Because the level ups, the upgrades would also help you, like the double presents collection, and the conveyors would help you in getting more that you needed. So you would have to strategize a little bit more. You'd have to be careful with your health, because you want to keep as much coal as you wanted. So overall, that kind of really built on it. I had a couple people test this game out, and the healing actually was an aspect that I didn't include in the initial game. It was suggested to me by one of the testers that I should be able to get health back, and so I added the coal furnace in so that players could get health back if they wanted, in exchange for sacrificing a little bit of their score. Overall, it was a really fun experience. The hiding mechanic is kind of taken from what I did last year, kind of built onto that. It was very, very straightforward. And the AI is actually very, very close to how I've done the tycoon AI, with a bit of mix of Turtle Trial and a couple of other games like Passing Room. They have a similar UI system where they're just following meshes and detecting borders, so it's built onto that aspect as well. Ultimately, this was a really fun game jam. There's not much more to it. The lighting was a big issue, so the lighting was much nicer than it is now. There was a lot more to the lighting. However, I ended up having a really big issue, which was my game actually crashed at one point. And as I come back on, I actually saved my game. So I came on and didn't realize an issue, and then saved my game and didn't have a backup. So what ended up happening was the lighting data ended up presumably getting corrupted. It was gone. And so my entire lighting data was destroyed, and we're looking at post-processing, high-level lighting for the mesh. Once that was gone, it meant that I had to build the lighting, bake the lighting again. Unfortunately, it would take a total of, I think it was 2 to 3 days to build the lighting because there was so much stuff in here. It looks quite simple, this scene, but there's actually a lot to this scene. There's a lot of things in here. It's actually one of my more packed scenes that I've done in my experience making games. Even though on the surface it doesn't like there's a lot, there is a tremendous amount of assets and things built on here. And so the lighting was really, really intense. It meant that essentially I couldn't build the game until the lighting was built. And so I had to lower the lighting settings, I had to remove a lot of the shadows, had to lower a ton of settings and remove a ton of lighting just to be able to build it ready for the game jam. Unfortunately, this issue happened just over halfway through building the game. And so I'd already built a lot of the lighting for the level. I think this was after my level was built, so and the last day I was pretty much done with what I had. So we're talking maybe a day left of being able to do the game, fix bugs, sort out issues, and get it all packed up for the final day. And so it ended up being really, really bad for me. I had to lower the lighting. Ultimately, though, I solved it. The lighting isn't too bad. I think it's okay for what it is, and it works really well. I didn't lose too much. I managed to, kind of build up the game a little bit, even if the lighting isn't as amazing as it was before. And ultimately, that was most of the issues. So now let's get to the actual game jam itself. Let me bring this over. And so we got the game jam right here. Again, it did end on the 10th of December. I was a little bit late to prepare for this game jam, which again is why I brought assets over, because this was announced really, really late this year. It was actually only announced maybe a few days before. I think it was about 4 days before, 5 days before. So that was really, really late. I just come from a previous game jam, which is the Passing Rooms game that I made for, and so I was a little bit burned out and wasn't too sure I was going to take part. But I've taken part in this for 2-3 years, so I really wanted to do this year as well. After the game jam was finished, I'd submitted it before then, and it's all ready to be have a look, essentially. You can see how many ratings there were, how many entries. There was actually a couple more entries that have been pulled because they didn't quite work, but in total there was a tremendous amount of games, and I actually played a lot of them. I played most of them, and there was a lot of really good ones, really fun ones, really well done, and I was very, very, very impressed. Luckily, as I mentioned, I got to play most of them, and I managed to give feedback to most of them. There was some I just didn't get time for. Here are the results. So you'll be able to see my results in a minute, but some of these are absolutely really well done. I really enjoyed them. Here's mine. So I came 17th, ranked 17th. Out of 61 entries, so pretty happy with that. Of 67 entries, I came 17th. I was really proud, really happy with what I'd done, and I managed to get quite some good feedback as well, which is really what I'm going for. Getting feedback is really, really important. In total, it was a really fun experience. Now, if I quickly go over to the submissions, you can see how many I've rated. I rated 53 games. I didn't get to the very end. I didn't manage to get to the last 12. I just ran out of time. But I managed to do 53, and I managed to play them all. It was amazing. Some of them are absolutely really cool and really well done. Prismatic was one of my favorites as well, being able to color code to be able to create a tower defense game. That was one of my favorites. Some of them are really, really well done. But yeah, overall it was a really fun game jam experience. Let's have a quick look at my game now. So here it is. Here's my page. So there's my score, my raw score, my current score, and what I got in general. and I got a lot of feedback. A lot of people played it. I played, like I mentioned, I gave very solid feedback to a lot of people. Luckily they came back to me and gave me some really good feedback. But as you can see, a lot of people did enjoy it, especially the factory aspect. People thought the children were creeper, and I'm glad that everyone got the general idea of the game down, which matched the opposite theme. We've also got here the taunt, which was hilarious, which I didn't show off the taunt, but there is a taunt in there if you press T. Of course, a lot of people thought that it was really fun. A lot of people genuinely liked the factory aspect the most. I think that was the most creative part of the game in general. Just as someone said here, the Tycoon games really enjoyed the factory and upgrades. Of course, issues with the presents, as you just saw, like the picking up is a bit weird. But in general, people seem to like it. And I was really happy with that. So overall, this was a really fun game jam. I'm really happy I did it. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for more for the game jam, really. Keep a heads up, because there'll probably be one more video where I either go over the Tycoon game, or there'll be like an update video. Most likely I'll be going over the Tycoon game and then releasing it, and we'll also have a video which is an update, which will be going over kind of all the things I've done this year, and then kind of closing off the year with a positive note. So this has been ProTaleDev, and I'll see you next time.